Hi, everyone. Welcome to this wealthmanagement.com Fast Chat. I'm Shannon Rossick, and I am just thrilled to be joined by Sheila Kafari Agassi, Executive Vice President and Chief Revenue Officer at United Planners, an independent broker-dealer with a story unlike any in the industry. So in this conversation, we're actually going to rewind the clock back to 1987 and walk through the firm's remarkable journey from its advisor-owned origin story to its bold move forward towards full independence and to its ongoing evolution under a new generation of leadership. So we'll explore how United Planners has not only stayed true to its culture of service, ownership, and independence, but why that culture continues to be its greatest growth engine. So let's go ahead and dive in. Sheila, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Shannon. It is a really exciting story to tell, and we're happy to be doing it here with you today. I think, it all started back in 1987 when a group of three gentlemen were invited to retire early. Their firm had been acquired by a firm who had since been acquired, and they're now under a new name. So these three gentlemen kind of saw that writing on the wall all the way back in the 80s and said, how do we form a firm that puts destiny control back in the hands of advisors? And that's where the brainchild of United Planners was really formed, where 55% of the firm is owned by the limited partners who are producing advisors who qualify to be owners in the organization. They share in the profits every year. 45% was then pitched to Pacific Life. And, hey, Pac Life, how about you take 100% of the liability, run the general partner, and 45% of the firm's annual profits? So probably not something many organizations would do today, but they agreed to it. And the firm was founded back in 1987.
And founding a BD with advisor ownership in the 80s was a pretty bold move at the time. And Sheila, you actually joined United Planners under unique circumstances. So I need you to spill the tea a little bit. What's the story and what really stopped you in your tracks and made you say, hold up, this is where I want to be, I'm staying?
All right. So interestingly, kind of flash forward then to December of 2006. So the firm that I was affiliated with was a large producing OSJ branch office, and we were looking for a new firm. We were on the hunt, and we narrowed our search down to two firms, one of them being United Planners. When I walked through the United Planners back office, I really went, wow, they have got a knack for hiring talent. These are some of the best and brightest people that I have ever worked with in the industry. And there's something really special here. Well, as we kind of went through our due diligence process, there was this other firm that was offering 40% of trailing 12 at the time. They're actually no longer in business. They've since been absorbed as well. The owner of our organization ultimately made that decision to join the other firm. After about a year of transitioning our 1,200 clients and working, 12 to 15-hour days trying to move those clients, United Planners kept kind of knocking, saying, hey, have you ever considered recruiting? Have you ever considered working with us? And I just said, I'd love to work with some of these people. It ended up working out. It happened. Unfortunately, about a month after I joined the firm, however, I was called down to our then CEO's office to be informed that Goldman Sachs had our books and we might be for sale. So, the structure that I was so excited about, that I thought was just absolutely incredible, all of a sudden, was being tested. And this was the first real test of the structure. But there's a great story and a very happy ending to all of this. So fortunately, I made the right decision, decided to hang tight and be in the retention business for a little bit. And am still with United Planners today. So 18 years later.
And at one point, it actually looked like United Planners might be absorbed into the LPL machine. So give us the real behind the scenes. What kept the team fighting to preserve independence instead of taking what some might consider the easy exit?
Sure. So we had sisters at the time. Pacific Life owned Mutual Services Corporation, Waterstone, Associated Securities. Those were all wholly owned firms of Pac Life, so 100% ownership of Pac Life. They were very easy to be sold. The negotiations happened with Pac. LPL acquired them. We know the story. About 18 months later, the back offices rolled up, all the advisors became LPL. And, in those negotiations, PacLife only had 45% to bring to the table. And of course, that firm was not interested in 100% of the liability for 45% of the firm's profits. And that's where our advisors first got the opportunity to lock elbows and say, you can't have our shares. We are not voting to dissolve the partnership. We are not voting to be LPL. We like the firm that we're with, and we want to remain United Planners. So in that instance, our executive management team, then Tom Oliver, Dave Schindel, and Mike Baker stepped up, acquired the 45% ownership from PacLife, and we truly spun off and became an independent broker-dealer with no outside ownership, owned solely then by employees and advisors of the firm.
And you officially broke away from PacLife on what you now call Independence Day. What was the mood like on that day? Did it feel like fireworks, or was it more of that like white knuckle roller coaster ride?
Well, it was all fireworks to begin with. I will say that there were, several inquiries. I mean, how are you going to survive without the mothership, and how, will this continue forward? The truth of the matter is United Planners had been independently profitable for over, a decade, closer to 2 decades at that point. So we were really running independently while PacLife was a great partner from the onset, and throughout our relationship with them, there was not a lot of support that was required to continue the firm. And, we've always been a pretty conservative firm, vanilla, as I like to say. Vanilla is a great flavor. And we just doubled down on our culture and who we are and who we serve, and why our mission is what it is, to protect and to guide, advisors in doing business the right way. So it really was more fireworks, Shannon, than, the white knuckle. I mean, there were some considerations, obviously, and some belt tightening and, some conservative moves, obviously, that needed to be looking forward in the next 5, 10, and 15 years. But again, here we are 18 years later and very financially sound and stable due to, the very conservative thoughts and processes that were put in place at that time.
I was going to say, because this was all the way back in 2007, so I would expect some big celebrations for the 20th anniversary then here in a few years. But, what I find so interesting is that Mike Baker, the now CEO, made a very big promise to preserve that partnership model that you've talked about. And that's incredibly rare. Why has that commitment mattered so much over time? And what's the real ROI of a culture like that you've created?
Sure. So interestingly, we are now on our 3rd generation of general partner. We talked about PacLife being the general partner, at the inception, and Mike Baker made a promise, and he said, if for any reason, he was the youngest of the 3 general partners, if for any reason I found myself as the sole remaining general partner, he would bring in other partners to help make sure of the longevity of the firm, that we maintain that culture, that we maintained, our core root values and who we are. So that's exactly where he found himself in 2019. One of the partners, the general partners, had retired, and another suddenly, unexpectedly passed away at the end of that year. And so, Mike acted very quickly, made sure that, he made some modifications, some steps. He hired a board. He, received counsel and advice, and made steps to really make sure into perpetuity that we preserved, this very unique structure and culture of the firm. So he's done a phenomenal job as our president and CEO, and we are certainly here to stay. So the general partner is now owned by Mike Baker, Chad Schindel, Billy Oliverio, and myself, making up that 45% ownership. The other thing that Mike did to really reward some long-term tenured employees was create a profit interest entity. And that took the vote of the limited partners, as well as the general partner, to create this 5% profit sharing with long-term tenured employees. I mean, we have some phenomenal employees, and those that I mentioned earlier that I recognize as, really being a knack for hiring talent. Some of those, if I could just shout out, I want to say Rose and Carla, Kathy, Maura, Jimmy. I mean, there are some people, and I didn't name them all, and I'm so sorry if I missed a few, but I mean, some of these people have been around for over 25 years, with the organization, and just the dedication, the loyalty, the support, and the culture that they bring, and the value, to the advisors that they bring to the table each and every day has just trickled through the rest of the employees. And to be able to share the profitability, with those employees that have been with the firm for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, really keeps us all driving and on the same page. So Mike's been brilliant in his ability to enhance what was originally a phenomenal structure. He's even created some enhancements to provide for that to last into perpetuity.
And as leadership transitions can get messy. A sudden passing of a partner, folks retiring, like you said, but you all really had the foresight to make it a story of continuity and say, you know what, don't panic, we've got this. How did you ensure that the culture stayed intact as new partners stepped in and the next generation took the reins? Were there specific steps or, communications that you instilled and put out, during this time of transition?
So honesty, openness, transparency, really focusing on the people. This is not about, the money, the structure. It's about the people. It's about the people we serve, the advisors we serve. It's about our internal and our external clients, or who are people that we work with every single day. Genuine care and passion for the people that we do business with, and not working with people that don't fit the culture. So a lot of times you have to be very specific in, eliminating folks that can ruin the culture. And, as they often say, one bad apple can ruin the bunch, making sure that there's no bad apples, and that, we really just double down and care for each other. And it's about getting up every day and doing the right thing.
So let's talk strategic shifts a little bit. Like you said, kind of cleaned house, there's less dead weight, more open architecture, no middlemen. How have you been able to balance that efficiency drive with staying true to your people first roots?
So it really was about taking a look, top down, big picture, and understanding how the traditional broker dealers operate and how we wanted to operate. There are many layers of ways that broker dealers are getting paid today. And, when we have this people first approach, when we are so focused on, the end user, the consumer, the investing public, right? And wanting them to invest better. Well, where can we trim the fat, if you will, and really eliminate, some of the extra layers that just don't deserve to be there? So that was where we kind of started having these conversations of, transparency, where other firms want to hide behind smoke and mirrors and create these, additional layers and try to hide them. We wanted to expose them and figure out where we could eliminate them and really get down to the brass tacks of, great service and outsourcing. Where can we get the consumer connected directly with, a custodian? So advisors working with a third party custodian versus trying to push everything onto a clearing platform where it may or may not belong. So, that's just one of the areas that we really kind of focused on to make sure that we stayed true to who we are and taking care of people and doing right by people by trimming the fat where we possibly could. We already operate on very small margins, so.
Well, it's certainly paid off. And I know we've burned through the timeline here. So let's fast forward to present day. You now have 450, I think, plus advisors now, over 200 million in GDC. Those are some serious numbers. But what's been the bigger win, you think? The growth stats or the cultural integrity that's still intact, or maybe both?
I would absolutely say the cultural integrity. I mean, we have to have conversations about, the cost of compliance, the rising cost of technology, the threats, obviously, to the organization with cybersecurity. I mean, we're living in a world that's completely different than the world was 20 years ago. And the threats continue, to morph and change. And And a lot of these, challenges that we face take money, obviously, to fix. So there's, very heavy business conversations, but when we can have those conversations and just bring a lot of intelligence and the right mindsets and the right people to the table to solve those problems and still laugh and high five and appreciate one another and the uniqueness that we each bring to the table, it's the culture that I'm most proud of, I have to say. So we can solve some really big problems. And I think it's because of that deep rooted trust that we have for one another and the quality of people that we surround ourselves with.
And I see it whenever I'm on site at your events. Everyone truly just loves to be there. And it really is incredible to build and maintain a culture like that. So when you think about where you're going next, whether it's tech, transition sport, culture, what's your North Star, if you will? And maybe what's that aha moment that made you realize, yes, we are certainly on the right path and still are?
Well, I would say the success of the organization certainly gives us that aha moment that we're on to something really, really special here. It is very unique. And every time I speak to an advisor and, they tell us about the challenges they're having with their existing firm, I have to say sometimes my jaw just kind of drops open. Like, I can't believe firms are still operating this way. This is a people business. This is a relationship business. And I think that, with some of the different ownership structures out there and, different capital infusion processes, that they've just lost sight of what this business is really about. So I am so proud that we have not. The North Star is just continuing to follow who we are, true to our core, and, believing in when you do the right things will come. And so, valuing our people, continuing to have that people first mentality. And just doing what's right because it's what's in our heart and it's what guides us. That's what's going to get us through, and a whole bunch of smart people.
So, Sheila, as we wrap things up here, United Planners, I've noticed, has gotten pretty edgy with their marketing recently with the no a-hole policy, the kick-ass culture, and with all the values that you've talked about in this conversation. Why did you ultimately choose to go in that direction? And how does that all fit into the culture that you are continuing to build?
Great question, Shannon. And it's one that we're answering quite a bit as of late. There are those who are like, wow, that is so edgy. It is so cool. You guys are clearly, queued up to be a little bit different. And of course, we have those, very traditional, conservative folks that, like us, Shannon, frankly, that, go, this is edgy. It is a little bit edgy, and we understand that. And what it all boils down to is it's a tagline. It really is meant to catch the attention, of the readership so that they can come and get to know us better and hear how we're really truly different. So, whether it's here to stay or it's here for a short period of time, is kind of TBD. We did get some advice from, some major world-renowned advertising agencies, on just kind of grabbing that first, level of attention that then allows someone to really get to know you and who you are. So, we are looking to attract the younger generation of financial advisors, and, the old ways of doing things are not always the best ways. So sometimes there's a little trial and error, and we're definitely willing to, just get a little bit edgy, to, see if we can attract more folks to hearing our story and continue to work to, bring down the average age of our advisor, which we've done very successfully, attracting young, consummate professionals, to our firm. I just certainly hope that we're not detracting by being a little edgy. So thanks for asking the question, though. Appreciate that.
Oh, of course. And as a marketer myself, I love to see difference. So you certainly have my endorsement, and I'm glad to hear it's working out so far. So keep it up, because honestly, it's all about staying true to your roots, and that's what you've done. So Sheila, thank you so much for going deeper on the United Planners story. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Shannon. Have a great day. See ya.